Okay, well, let's get started tonight. This is, again, I love these classes, and this is one of my kind of a series of classes that I absolutely love to teach. And if you've been with us throughout the year, we started off in January by really talking about how you can optimize your genetic expression through what you eat, how you think, how you move, your exercise plan, how you sleep. And then we went into really talking about stress management strategies in February. We then went into really talking about phases and stages and levels and biofields, all the different components of NSA care. And we've talked a lot about mindfulness as well. So we've covered a variety of different topics as the year has gone on. And power of habit, that really having healthy habits is such a big part of how you can really implement all of those things that we've talked about into a really healthy lifestyle. And so I'm also going to tie in how you can think about different strategies that you may have and how that maybe applies to your NSA care, because I'll definitely hit on reorganizational healing a little bit, and structure, behavior, perception, and how you can really identify different things that work well for you and how to incorporate that into the process of building really healthy habits. So as we go through this information, if you have any questions, make sure to type them in that Q&A box, and we'll make sure that we get to those at the end and we make time to do that. Okay. So as we go through this, so much of this information that I'm going to talk about is from the book by Charles Duhigg, so The Power of Habit. I love that book. He has so many good ideas and so much good research in it. And then and other parts of it are taken from James Clear work, Atomic Habits. So they are great, both books are both great books. And if you're interested in learning more, those are definitely resources. I definitely took a lot of the information from this class from those books and those resources. Okay, so I wanted to start with a story because I think that this really displays things very well. And this is a story, this is a case study that is actually from the book, The Power of Habit. And this is the character's name, or the person in the study was named Lisa. And so when Lisa was first interviewed, she was overweight. She mainly ate a diet of fast food. She didn't really exercise. She didn't move much for her job. She didn't move much in her free time either. She also smoked. She had started drinking at the age of 16, and that had really spiraled out of control, which we'll talk about in a minute. But by her mid-20s, she had over $10,000 in credit card debt. She had collection agencies calling her constantly. She could not hold a job for more than a year. Her husband announced that he was leaving her. And with that kind of increased stress, then her drinking actually increased, and she started spying on her husband's new girlfriend. And so her life was really out of control. And when you think about this, like if we go back to like kind of what the breakdown, or like the really low point in her life, was when she showed up at her ex's girlfriend's house intoxicated. And this was a real low point for her, but it also kind of was a wake-up call, if you want to call it that. And so what happened is that she decided that she would change her life, but really the first step she was going to do was something that she really had wanted to do for herself, which was travel to Cairo, Egypt. For whatever reason, that was really where she wanted to travel. And when she made that journey, or that trek across the world, she was really inspired, and she decided that she wanted to be able to come back the following year and trek through the desert. So she actually wanted to be able to be fit enough, be in shape enough, be healthy enough to be able to trek through the desert. And that decision, just the act of making that decision, is really what changed everything for her. And we're going to talk about why that is, because there's a lot of research behind that piece of it. So I love this quote: "The difference between who you are and who you want to be is what you do." So what happened in that situation is that what we always call, like Dr. Scott and I call, her why emerged. So she needed a bigger purpose. If you're going to change very deeply ingrained habits in your life, it is really important to have a why. It's really important to have a bigger purpose. So in order to travel through the desert, Lisa decided that she would have to start to exercise in order to be in the heat and to be in that dry climate. In order to be able to actually physically walk and do all of that, she needed to start to exercise. The key was that she had a bigger purpose of why she wanted to exercise. It wasn't like, I have my cousin's wedding in 6 weeks and I want to look really good when I'm there. That's not really a bigger why. This is a bigger purpose. And so she wanted to be fit enough to be able to do something really big with her life. And so 1 year later, she actually did go back to the desert. And what happened is that she traveled through the desert in a caravan. So she actually was sitting the whole time that she was traveling through the desert. So she didn't really have that need for fitness, but it didn't really matter because that is what propelled her to be able to make a bigger change within her life. So deciding that she needed to exercise for a bigger purpose gave Lisa all she needed to actually be able to change her life. That's what gave her the fuel. That's what went beyond motivation. That's what went beyond it's, 5:30 a.m. and I don't really feel like getting up to work out. It was that bigger purpose that made the shift for her. So with the why in place, that began her change. That's what began her progression through life. And so I love this quote again, change might not be fast and it isn't always easy, but with time and effort, almost any habit can be reshaped. So if you're looking at your life and you're seeing different habits that you have that you're not really happy with, which I think we all have, things that we have formed maybe for a good purpose at one time, but maybe they're not serving us anymore, know that any habit can be reshaped. The bad news is that you can't ever rewire. You can't ever actually get rid of a habit. It's going to be there. The wiring for it is there, and we'll talk about that more. But you can reshape it, and we're going to talk about a lot of different strategies for that tonight. So the story then goes on is when Lisa was interviewed at age 34, she was a regular exerciser. She had no debt. She didn't drink or smoke. She'd held the same job for 39 months, which was a huge deal for her past history. She had lost 60 pounds. She had gone back to school to get her master's degree, and she owned her own home. So you're looking at someone's life who is completely different than what it looked like at the beginning of the story. So when you think about it, most people are thinking that they are making a lot of choices to do certain things throughout the day, but it's not really the case. A huge percentage of what we do, even what we think about, is habits on a daily basis. And so we can kind of say when we have that information and we know that they're habits, we know that we can look at things a little bit differently. We can analyze our life in a different way. So here we go. More than 40% of the actions that people perform each day are not actual decisions, but habits. So we know that this is fact, so we can evaluate things differently. So let's talk a little bit about the formation of a habit, because even the habits that you might despise that you do, you developed them for a purpose, and your brain remembers them for a purpose. And there's actually some positive things that if we couldn't remember things, or if we couldn't develop habits, our brain couldn't do that, we would have serious issues. But here's how they form. So we encounter some kind of a problem. So in this diagram, you're looking at the mouse encountering this click, or which even like a barrier. And so when this barrier is open, the mouse then can travel, and he's searching. So he's searching for some kind of a solution to what the mouse would encounter as like a problem. And the reward is that the mouse finds and eats the chocolate. So the thing to realize about that is that your brain needs to find a solution for a problem, and it will always remember what solved the problem. It doesn't happen right away, but it happens with repetition. So here's just a couple of examples, but you feel anxious and find that going on a run is very calming and you feel really good from the endorphins. You're mentally exhausted, and maybe you're mentally exhausted from work, and so you find that video games or a glass of wine is relaxing to you. So your brain again remembers that it was a solution to not feeling the way that you wanted to feel. Your brain encounters the problem, it explores solutions, it encounters a reward. After the reward is found, the brain catalogs what is happening before before the reward, so that it can learn from that experience. I'm going to explain this in a different diagram, because what's fascinating to this is that your brain is actually going to start to crave the reward, crave the feeling of the reward before the reward actually happens. So any kind of time that your brain is kind of searching for a solution, you may be trying different things. You may fail that what didn't work, your brain won't kind of let that go, but it will learn what did work, and it will try different solutions until it finds what works. Useless actions fade away. The useful actions are reinforced. And that is how the brain is rewired. All of this happens in the basal ganglia of the brain. And so again, what is really important here is that habits aren't going to disappear, but they're encoded into the structures of the brain. if you couldn't do that, if you couldn't encode habits, you wouldn't know how to tie your shoes or brush your teeth. All of this would have to be learned on a daily basis. So it's really important that we do have to, that we can actually learn habits, even though sometimes it feels painful at the same time. So this is what I wanted to go over with you. So you're going to see two different diagrams here. So here we have the mouse encountering in the first few rounds of him encountering the chocolate, or he or she for the mouse. But anyway, so here's the click. It starts to go through the maze looking for a solution, searching for something. And the first few times that is actually happening, the brain is super active. There's a ton of activity as the brain is searching for something to solve this problem. And when it finds a solution, it gets the chocolate, and then you see again the peak in the brain activity. What's important to see in the next diagram is this is what happens after several different rounds. We are encountering the problem. The brain has gone through this multiple times now. And so instead of it being high brain activity to search for a solution, the brain is actually checked out now. The brain is actually decreasing the activity, and then it gets the solution or the reward, which is the chocolate. And so the brain activity peaks again. So we have in a new behavior, we have a ton of activity. And then when we have the old behavior, we have very little activity. So that's really the important piece of this information. I want you to realize that as your brain is forming a behavior, it's going to work really hard to do that. There's going to be a lot of activity. But the reason why it's so easy to check out and do things on autopilot is once our brain has found the solution, it's an established way of being. When we have that kind of a situation, your brain basically goes on autopilot. The activity shuts down until the reward has been received. So when we look at that piece of it, we're going to go into this a little bit more. So this is a really good experiment that was done that showed us this was a gorilla, Julio, and he was looking at shapes on a screen. And so in the experiment, what he did was any time he had a shape on the screen, he would have to pull a lever. And when he pulled the lever, he would get juice, which was the reward. And his brain would have this little spike in activity because he received the reward. So what happens and what the groundbreaking research was in this experiment was that he was looking at the shapes on the screen. He realized that he was going to get a reward. This is again after several rounds of this happening. And then he pulled the lever and then he received the juice. So if you look at that in the second diagram, what you're seeing is that the juice wasn't really that exciting, but it was the craving of the reward. So it was the actual process of like, I am going to receive the juice that created the actual spike in the brain activity. So you can look at that as Pavlovian association, but we're actually craving the reward more than we're actually getting a response from getting the reward, if that makes sense. So that is something really key to realize, is that we can use that information now in our formation of habits, and realizing that when we can crave how we're going to feel when something is completed, that is a game changer. So how do we create that response for ourselves? And so the thing about it again is the more often we use a particular pathway, so maybe you have had a habit for 20 years, the broader and deeper ingrained this particular neural pathway becomes. It doesn't mean that it can't be shifted, but it means that it's not going to go away. So we need to have really good strategies that help us combat that, so we have a healthier way of being, and there's ways to do that. I'm going to just very quickly go over this piece of it because this is where NSA care comes into play. So you all have probably been to many of our classes before on NSA. It's really important to realize that NSA really increases or enhances mind-body awareness. A lot of that is happening in the frontal cortex of the brain. When we decrease neurological tension in the system, it actually increases the efficiency of how the brain is functioning. So when that happens, we're also decreasing fight or flight tension, which when we're in fight or flight, most Americans are in fight or flight almost all the time, given what our lifestyles are like and the amount of stress that we are under. But when you're under fight or flight, your lower brain centers are very active. And when low brain centers are active, we are in automatic behavior. It is easiest for us to do automatic things that are deeply ingrained. But when we have higher brain function, we're activating the frontal cortex of the brain. We can have higher thinking, we can have better decision making, we can have better executive function. And so when you get adjusted, it's actually suspending automatic unconscious behaviors. And that pause or that creation of space within the neurological function allows us to be much more aware of our behavior patterns. And that's what I'm looking for the first thing to happen is if you go back to, like, say, a habit that maybe you're trying to erase, maybe it's eating potato chips. Let's just say that. And it doesn't have to be a nutritional thing. I just chose something. But say you decided that I really hate that I eat potato chips at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever it is. Whatever happened typically in the brain to kind of go into that automatic behavior is typically set up much more in advance than the actual act of eating the potato chips. So maybe the craving, you started to crave like the saltiness or whatever, the taste of that much, much earlier. But if you can have a pause and you can create higher levels of brain function or more activity within the frontal cortex of the brain, you can have that increased awareness that can allow you to make a more effective choice. But that's the key, is we want to suspend the automatic unconscious behavior that's active in the lower brain centers, and we want to create more activity in the higher thinking centers of the brain, more awareness. So the other piece that we're going to talk about a little bit, and I'm going to very briefly go over this, but if you've been to the reorganizational healing class, NSA is classified as reorganizational healing, which is kind of a broader level of healing that NSA provides. And one of the things that we talk about is that reorganizational healing is basically where healthcare meets personal development. And you can have 3 different ways of being in terms of how you function. Like, what is your core nature? Are you a structure person, a behavior person, or a perception person? So a structure person is a person who really, like, in terms of encountering behavior change, you need a plan. So I'm a highly structured person. I like to have lists. I have notes. I have all kinds of kind of the order, how I want to do things. I have kind of a very set schedule of what I eat for breakfast, what I eat for lunch, how the meals are planned out. I like to have organization, and that's how my world functions best. A behavior person does best by doing. So again, when we are talking about like behavior change, you might not want to think about it too much. You might just want to start doing it. And so you may try different things and try different modes of behavior or different processes by just doing it and then seeing how it worked for you. You will have more energy going about this process in that way. A perception person really needs to think about how they will feel when that behavior is shifted or when that habit is shifted. So perception people often need a lot of space to determine how they feel. And once they determine how they feel or how that like habit change or behavior change will make them feel, then they can move forward. So that is a huge topic. There's so many more levels of detail that we could go into that. But if you want more help determining that, make sure you check out our blog. I have articles on that. They're on our website under the blog section. You want to go into the heading of reorganizational healing, but you will find specific articles on structure, behavior, and perception. But that will give you more information, but we can also work on that with your adjustment. So if it's something you want to find out more about, we can actually help kind of read your body, read your system to give you more guidance on whether you function well with structure, behavior, or perception. Or you can be like me where you just know because you're extremely one way. So that's just one way to think about in the process of habit change, another tool that can help. So when we go through this, science shows it's simple to form a new habit. So we talked about the process of cue and then searching for a reward and finding the reward. When we're going through habit change or even forming a habit, we want to create a cue, clearly define what the reward will be. So an example of that is I exercise, I love the feel of endorphins, and I have a great smoothie. So maybe there's multiple rewards that are happening in that situation. Or I meditate and I love the sense of peace that I feel for hours and hours after meditating. So here is the development of a new habit. So the routine can emerge. So we can counter the problem, something that is some kind of a cue that is signaling to your brain that something is about to happen. You can create different cues, and we're going to talk about that. And then you create your routine, and then you create a reward. The routine will become automatic when you start to crave the reward. So make sure it's the kind of reward that you're wanting, and we'll look at that. So here are James Clear, the four laws of habit change. Law number one, whatever you are trying to create, you want to make it really obvious. So if your goal is to work out in the morning, first thing, you lay out your clothes. They're very visible to you in the bathroom. So you have a reminder immediately in the morning that you're going to exercise. And realize as motivation fades, the environment matters even more. So we want to create a plan, implement the plan. We want to know what our date, our time, and our place is going to look like. So when I perform X, or when X happens, which is maybe when I wake up in the morning, I will perform Y, which is exercise. Often people they don't actually lack motivation, they lack clarity. So as a structure person, I really like a concrete plan, but there is some very good research that's showing us that we need to be very clear on what that vision is going to look like, because when we encounter the first part of our day, we can encounter decision fatigue very, very quickly. I read a study once that showed that by checking your email for 20 to 30 minutes could deplete your ability to make healthy decisions throughout the rest of the day. And they call that decision fatigue. So often people, if it's like, if what they want and what they want to create doesn't have a lot of clarity to that, it's very easy to go in decision fatigue very quickly and then not have the energy or the willpower to make what they want to happen. And so instead, we want to think of when the moment of action occurs, there's no need to make a decision. The plan is already there. It just needs to be executed. And so we actually want the healthier things that we're trying to create, the habit changes, to have that automatic behavior. I also love, if anyone's read Mel Robbins, she talks about her action plan of like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I actually use this a lot in the morning. And again, if we come back to network, this is more of a behavior kind of a thing. But if I know that I need to get up at 5:45 so I can work out on time to get my morning started, and I really don't want to go get out of bed, I will say in my head a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it's like a rocket launching into space, and I just get up and I do it, and I put the clothes on and I go downstairs and I do it. So that is one thing I've taught that to my son. I don't want to do a math problem. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, do it. So there's different things that can work really well for that, but it's kind of like a launching off of just like, this is what's happening now. But really for the habit change piece of it, I will do this thing at this time, at this location. There's a clear-cut plan of how that will happen. So by having a strong plan, you become very clear on what you want. We typically will have a strong why attached to why we want to achieve this. By having that plan, it's easier to not succumb to distractions that would derail us from the ultimate goal that we're trying to achieve. The strategy or the system to obtaining the goal is often more important than the actual goal itself. So we're going to talk about a couple different strategies here: keystone habits, habit stacking. So habit stacking is things like, after I brush my teeth, I will immediately put on my workout clothes to exercise. That would be habit stacking. You take a very established routine and you add something to it. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So keystone habits are things that you do on a daily basis that are things that you've probably done your entire life, like brushing your teeth, or maybe it's making your bed, or maybe it's making breakfast. Whatever it is, are things that you do on a consistent basis. And when you start to add things to keystone habits, they can be small enough changes that it's not super overwhelming, and it can make a positive behavior addictive because you see the reward from it. You're doing it consistently enough to see the reward. So here's a keystone habit. I brush my teeth every day, hopefully twice a day at least. And you have a new issue that I actually learned, okay, I need to deeply stretch my calves in a very specific way every single day. So I now use my keystone habit of brushing my teeth. My toothbrush has a 2-minute timer on it. I stretch each calf for about a minute while I'm brushing my teeth. So the strategy was established, the mission was accomplished. The keystone habit was brushing the teeth. I added the stretching of the calves to that routine. So that can make things really simple. There's another strategy where you can insert a new behavior into an established routine. So here is the goal of I want to read more. Well, the strategy then is create some kind of an implementation plan using keystone habits or habit stacking. So the established routine might be that you wake up and you make the bed, and then you shower. The new routine is that you wake up, you make the bed, you place a book on the bed. Now it's very obvious that you see the book, you want to read more, and then you shower. So you inserted something very simple into what was already the routine, and it gives you a new cue that I want to read before bed nightly. Make the cue very obvious, because that cue, again, is going to create a different pathway in the brain or add new information to that so that the actual routine is shifting. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So the next piece of it that we can do in his 4 laws of habit change is law 2 is make it attractive. So realize again in the neural research, the anticipation or the craving of the reward is what leads to take the action. The actual reward doesn't matter as much as you actually wanting that reward, craving that reward. So the wanting and the desire is more desirable than liking the actual reward. It's the expectation of a rewarding experience that motivates us to act. So here you can do what he calls temptation bundling. So what that looks like is that maybe you really want to watch Netflix, but you do that when you're walking on the treadmill because you need to walk on the treadmill and you really want to watch the Netflix. So you're enjoying watching Netflix while you're walking on the treadmill. Another example that you could do is you're more likely to do something that you have to do when you bundle it with something that you love to do. So I really want to go snowshoeing, but I need to clean up my email inbox, the email inbox, and then go snowshoeing. I need to express more gratitude, but I also want to watch ESPN. After I express gratitude to my partner or family, I will watch ESPN for 20 minutes. There's so many different ways that you can look at this. I will say the warning with that is that my mom used pre-macking all the time when I was growing up. So in order for something good to happen, all of these other things needed to happen first. The problem was all the fun stuff never gotten to because there was always so much that was like, I got to do this, I got to get this done, I got to get all my homework done. But the fun stuff then didn't happen. So I really encourage you to use it smartly, that you're actually giving yourself a reward and you're actually developing that craving for the things that you want to be rewarded with. And law 3, we want to make it easy. And so the key with this is that we've all heard is that it takes 21 days to form a habit. That's really not that important that it's 21 days. The key is that it's happening very consistently. So it's like if you exercise once a week, that's not probably going to be enough to develop the craving for how you feel when you exercise. So I guess the whole idea of that is repetition is key. And actions need to become so automatic that the brain doesn't have to actively engage in order for that healthy habit to occur. So again, when you do things consistently and you can crave that reward, that's going to be the key to change. So we want to think of how many times we've performed that action. So in the piece about willpower, so willpower leads to decision fatigue. And so the things that we plan ahead of time are the things that are going to most likely be successful. And if you're a behavior person, then you need to think about like, how are you going to keep these things in the front of your mind so you make sure that they happen. Scott is a really strong behavior individual. So he uses behavior as a driving force in his world. The why is absolutely key for him. I'm always amazed because I have to have my plan and my lists and my Post-its and whatever to remind me of what I'm trying to achieve. Scott is more just like, no, I'm just going to go do it. And as long as he remembers why. So for Scott, it's going to be like, I really want to climb this 514. So I'm going to work out X, Y, and Z. I'm going to eat a certain way. I'm going to stretch and do rehab a certain day. I'm going to make sure I get my adjustments in, but he just does it. He doesn't have to have it written down. He doesn't have to have a plan. He just does it. but something needs to drive that action of behavior. So you really want to think about that piece of it so you don't succumb to decision fatigue, which again, most of us are going to encounter by the beginning of our day. So what's going to drive us to be able to actually create change? But the key is, again, just like James Clear talked about, doing things repetitively is going to lead to transformational changes. So if you want to, see a gain with how you're eating, how you're exercising, whether it's meditation, you may have a billion things that you want to work towards, but try to get them in consistently. It doesn't have to be meditating for 2 hours. It can be meditating for 10 minutes, but you do it every day. So the consistency is key. This is one of, I think, the most life-changing quotes that I have read from this book. Never miss twice. If you miss one day, try to get back on track as quickly as possible. We all have times in our life that maybe feel really chaotic. We have a lot going on. And so maybe we miss a workout, or we miss meal prepping for the week, or whatever happens. It can be really easy to get off rail, or off, just really off the path of what we're trying to create. And so whatever you can do to bring yourself back on track as quickly as possible will help you make the biggest gains. So I know, like, last couple weekends ago, I had a seminar the whole weekend. I had very little free time. And so it was really difficult to prepare good meals. And so I actually got up and made salads and stuff to bring with me. But by the end of that weekend, Sunday night, it was like, oh, like, I just don't have a lot of time to deal with much at this point. Monday was, okay, what can I do at this point to help our family eat well throughout the day? So I got up a little earlier. I did a lot of meal prep that morning, but tried to get us on track as quickly as possible, because it will make a huge difference mentally as well as physically for being able to keep on track with the path to that, to really achieving a goal. Law number 4 is to make it satisfying. So what this means is, at the beginning of a goal, you need a reason to stay on track, because that habit may not be very visible. So you need to think of something that's an immediate reward in place, something that keeps you really excited about making the healthy changes that you're working towards. The ending of the experience is vital. So however you finish, like, say, you finish your exercise, we want you to feel good when you finish that. It should feel satisfying that you did that. And when you think about the opposite of that, just resisting temptation is not very satisfying, because there's no immediate reward to it. So what you can do, he has the great suggestion in here, is that you tie something that you want into the process of resisting what you don't want. So what he gave as an example for that is, if I avoid Starbucks, I just saved at least $5. So I'm going to transfer $5 into a savings account for a vacation that I'm working towards. Now I'm seeing an immediate reward for what I'm trying to achieve. So again, habits stick. When you think of the neurological wiring that's happening, habits stick when they're immediately satisfying at the completion of the habit. That's what your brain will remember, how you felt at that moment. So think of that again. I've said it a billion times, but cravings are what drive the habits, and figuring out how to spark a craving makes creating a new habit easier. So behaviors that produce a satisfying result tend to get repeated, where behaviors that produce a less satisfying result are less likely to be repeated. So this is a really key point of this as well. You want to select rewards that reinforce the identity that you are trying to create. I think I've read so many different books or blogs or all kinds of stuff that, like, well, we're going to reward my dietary changes with a cheat day. Well, that's not in line with maybe what you're trying to create. So think of this. I exercise, so I eat a bowl of ice cream. It creates a conflicting result. It's not a congruent idea, not a congruent reinforcement. But maybe I exercise the first day, so I scheduled a massage and I kept exercising. I did something right away to say, hey, I've already created this reward for myself. So that is much more congruent, because it's aligned with creating a healthier person. The more a habit aligns with who you want to be, the easier and more rewarding completing the habit will be. So I love this quote as well. Incentives create a habit, identity sustains the habit. So changing how you feel about yourself changing who you believe yourself to be are all really key in the determination of creating a habit. So when you fall in love with the process rather than the product, you don't have to wait to give yourself permission to be happy. You can be satisfied anytime your system is running. You know, when you think about especially habit changes in terms of health, they are not quick. They are not quick changes. I really feel like I crave exercise so much because I crave how it makes me feel, that I feel really good when that routine is happening. When it happened on a daily basis, it makes me feel so good. So I crave that piece of it. I might not see the results from that for a while, and that's okay because I'm feeling the reward from the process that's actually happening, and that's really key to the process of changing a habit. So the why helps to form the craving. Self-motivation becomes easier when we see our choices as affirmations of our deeper values and our goals. So that's really an important piece of who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? How do you want people to perceive you? What are the values and goals that are going to bring you into that kind of a state? Important piece. So here, how do we get rid of an old habit? So we change a behavior, you're going to keep the same cue, but you're going to insert a new routine. So you're going to use the craving or the why to anchor that habit and create new behaviors. So again, maybe the cue was a stressful day and you decide that I'm going to go on a walk through my neighborhood or I'm going to go on a walk in the park. I'm not going to have the glass of wine. So you have the same cue, stressful day, but now you've inserted a new routine into that. You crave how that feels to be in nature, to breathe fresh air, to hear the birds chirping, whatever it is, but you create a different craving through that process. And then you can get rid of an old habit. So again, when you think about this, the brain is not going to truly get rid of the old habit. It's going to be there. We have wiring for that. But this is what we can do to make habit change possible. We can make the old habit, we want to make it invisible, unattractive, make it difficult, make it unsatisfying. It no longer aligns with the identity that you are working towards. So habits are malleable throughout your life. You can do this, you can make these changes, and what you do every day matters more than what you do every once in a while. And for a habit to stay changed, people must believe change is possible. I think that's a really key component of this, is that you have to believe in yourself that you can create change, that you can, making these kinds of changes can be deep, they can be big, and they can be life-changing, but you have to believe that it's possible for you. So I'm going to leave this open. So I've got time for questions. So if anyone has questions or comments that they want to put in the Q&A, I will pull that up in just a minute. I just want to wrap it up by just saying, I think we all get frustrated with ourselves in different ways, but there's so many opportunities that you have if you really evaluate what is happening, what's working, what are the cues. So use that higher brain function to really look at what the cues are that are sending you into different patterns of automaticity, that automatic brain behavior. And how can you use those cues to either create a completely different habit or insert a new behavior into that whole cue process? And what rewards can you really work towards that you can have that craving for? What is going to make that motivation possible, that is going to be sustainable because you're actually craving that actual reward? So I just wanted to say that we are currently have a drawing for $100 Natural Grocers gift card. So if you write a Google review, we so appreciate it. It helps us impact our community at a much greater level, but you'll receive an entry into our drawing for the $100 Natural Grocers gift card. Coming up in July, I will be teaching phases, stages, levels, and biofields. That goes through so many different levels of network care, so many different details and what is happening through your healing process and how to maximize it. This fall, I'll be teaching the class on reorganizational healing, and it's really important that you attend phases, stages, levels, and biofields before that class because it gives you the foundation to understand the material that we'll be talking about. And then we also in July have our annual food and school supply drive that will happen this year. Typically we've donated to the Action Center. This year, we've gotten advice to donate to the Christian Action Guild in Golden because I guess they don't have as much funding. So we're trying to support another organization this year. So that is coming up in July. We're really excited about that. And for any information, if you want more information on NSA, deeper levels of reorganizational healing, health, wellness, check out the blog section of our website because I've got a lot of material there. Okay, so I am going to go through here. Okay, any more on breaking old habits? So let's go back to that. So if you want to break an old habit, so again, you can look at this, whatever cue there is. So I think stress is a really big one for a lot of people. Stress is a big driver of habits that we maybe are not really happy about, but maybe it's something else. Maybe it's like after someone exercises, they eat a certain way, or they engage, they kind of zone out in front of the TV and they're tired of spending that time that way. So I want you to really think about what that cue is. It's so incredibly important. And how can you use that cue to do something different or completely? I mean, for some people, I will say that what I have witnessed from so many clients is that if they can make it invisible, they have one of the best levels of success. So whether they don't buy junk food anymore, they get rid of a TV or make it invisible in their house so that it's not an option anymore. They get rid of subscriptions to Netflix and whatever else they had, but make something very difficult to achieve. Because if it's around in your environment and everyone else in your environment is doing that, it's going to be really tough to break the habit. So that's really the biggest advice I can give you, is really analyze what the cue is and what would make you feel better than doing what you're doing right now. What would be worth craving, whether it's how what you think about, how you feel afterwards, what can help drive a new behavior into the old pattern. I hope that helps some. I would highly recommend getting these books. If I had to choose, maybe I'd choose James Clear. He's got a little bit more, you're only going to choose one book, but I would choose that one because it's a little bit more kind of easier to understand. I think he really came off of Charles Duhigg's research and kind of expanded that and made it more accessible to people. So, anything else? Okay, well, I don't see any other questions popping up. So I'm so glad you joined. Please ask us any questions that you have if you're in the office and you want to talk about this more or need any more info. So this the practice member that the key problem to break is procrastination. I seriously would try Mel Robbins' technique of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I swear it works, but you have to be honest with yourself when you do it. So when I started that, I never looked back. So whether it's like, I have to wash the dishes and I don't want to do it, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, just turn on the water and do it. But it does help. So that is another strategy that you can use that hopefully will help. Okay. So I don't see any other questions popping up, but please, CW, if you want to talk about it more in the office, we will do that. So I so hope you're having a great day and a great evening. Thank you so much for joining me. I know people's time is very valuable, but I hope to see you soon. Thank you so much.